What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and today we're going to be doing a fun episode. We're going to be going over skins, different character skins, both in the character select menu and in the game. Specifically, we're going to be able to select our character on the menu, press a button to switch their skin, just like this. You can see I can switch between his available skins. Same with the mutant. And Vanguard. We're going to be able to switch individual skins using one material slot or multiple material slots. You can see the Vanguard actually has, if I make player to the Vanguard, you can see a little bit better. You can see he's actually got his overall skin here, right? His body skin, but then his visor goes from a black to a gold. So changing multiple materials for each character. Then when we end up playing the game, so I'll go ahead and set this back. Whatever skins I have selected during the character select will then transfer over to the game. And you can see I've got this like clown mutant and this crazy visor guy. And just to note, this guy is still in development, my Vanguard. So you can see he doesn't have a lot of his animations. His input stack doesn't have images added. Those are things I'll be fixing up. So don't worry about those. Those aren't really bugs. They're just functionality I haven't finished yet. But I wanted to put him in. He's got 2 material slots, which makes that pretty interesting. So to get started, let's go ahead and open up our character select screen for one. And let's go ahead and open up our, I called them Widget Actors. These are the 3D actors that go over the, or go in front of the camera on the character select screen widget. So if you've been following the series, you'll know what these are. I can link the iCard to that episode right now. And lastly, let's go ahead and open up our character BPs. Alright, so for those who are new to the series, if you want to catch up on the series, I think this is episode 44, so we're pretty deep in this fighting game tutorial. If you want to catch up, feel free to click the icon in the top right corner. It'll bring you to the very first episode of the series, and you can start working on that. Otherwise, just note that this tutorial is meant to change skins. It's not going to be changing your outfit. So if you need to change certain parts of your character, like, okay, this time he's got a helmet on or something like that, we are going to be doing a separate tutorial for that. This is for skins specifically. So alternate costumes in terms of like colors, color schemes, things like that. You can do that this method. If you're going for more the Killer Instinct feel where like you can put different helmets and armor and different pieces on your character, that's going to be done a different way. But anyway, just letting you know, that's what we're specifically covering today. Skins, color schemes, different materials and textures. We will be going over the outfits and costumes in another episode. Okay, so I've got a bunch of stuff open here, but don't worry, it's all pretty much the same stuff. There's actually only 3 different things here. And then these are just specific to the classes, so I know what things I want to add. First of all, let's go into the code. All we really need here is actually the game mode and the base game instance. So you can see my base game instance.cpp still has nothing in it. But in our header file, we had our P1 character class and P2 character class, which I've added comments for now. But I've also added P1 skin index and P2 skin index. If you have more than 2 characters on the screen at a time, you might want to set it up more the way that I did in the Super Smash Bros. Tutorial series. There'll be a skin episode for that coming out very soon. So go ahead and add 2 integers. I call them P1 skin index, P2 skin index. Made them edit anywhere, blueprint read write. Just like above, I put it into the category player references. But that stuff's not really that important. Just make sure it's edit anywhere and blueprint read write. These skin indices, as it would be said if I was talking about them plural, the skin index variables, what they do is they're essentially they're an integer that holds the certain materials we should apply to the character. We don't have to store a reference to those materials inside our code. We can just store an index to them, set the index on the character select screen, and then those characters themselves can handle the logic. So the reason I put in base game instance is because we can use it in the character select screen and in the game without any trouble, without having to save out the variables twice. We are going to actually save the materials on both the character select actor and the in-game actor. I am intentionally keeping them separate. Okay, once you've added that, you're good to go. The only other thing we do need is the game mode. I'm actually officially commenting this out and probably going to delete it, but I just wanted to show you what it was so you know what I'm talking about. When you use the template to make your game, you will get in this game mode constructor something called Constructor Helpers. So Constructor Helpers will set some default pawn class to a default BP class. Specifically, it sets the default pawn class to be the side scroller character blueprint. We did not make this. I mean, we've edited it since, but this is just your mannequin blueprint class. If you want to find him, it is in side scroller CPP blueprints. This guy right here. The reason I'm removing this is I'm going to start making the mannequin like the other fighters, because right now he doesn't even have a hurt box and he can't do any attacks. So he can't take damage and he can't do attacks. So he's pretty worthless in our game other than to look pretty cool. And I just want to give you guys a heads up. If you start changing a bunch of stuff in there and put something like a base game instance reference in there, this line of code can actually screw it up, because it'll try and, when this pawn class is set, it will try to use the base game instance early on, and then your editor will never load. You'll get stuck at like 71 or 73%. So if you're doing that, if you see yourself doing that, or you just want to get ahead of it by deleting it now, we don't need this line of code. We're already setting up logic now to spawn our actors and make them defaults. We don't need this at all. Feel free to delete this whole block or just comment it out if you feel more comfortable doing that. Make sure you build, of course, and compile. Same for the base game instance changes, and then you'll be good to go. Okay, and the rest is actually in Unreal, so that'll be done for the code for now. Let's go to where the meat and potatoes are of this, and that is the character select screen. So the character select screen is going to do most of the logic for this. It's actually not a lot of logic at all. This is the entire function. We are going to have to call this function when we receive a certain input. So if you go into our event graph, again, if you've been following the series, you'll know this. This is the 3D character select screen, and what I mean by that is the character select screen widget where the actors spawn in front. In that widget, we have all of our listen for input actions to determine if it's player 1 or player 2 using the menu controls. And I have the confirms as well. I've added 2 different listen for input actions at the end of here. So here are my confirms. I just tacked these on to the end. The rest of the stuff that I've done in the other episodes is still here. I didn't get rid of it or move it. I did move it, but I just moved it over. It's still in the same position. Okay. So we need to have a button to be able to do this. Again, I'm just doing this for keyboard right now. There is a video in the works for controller input, but we don't have that out right now. So you'll see how that links together later. But basically, go into Edit, Project Settings, and then click Input. You can click plus twice to add 2 more action mappings. You're going to have one for Menu Change Outfit P1 and Menu Change Outfit P2. So these are my two controls. 2, the number 2, is for player 1 on the keyboard, and the number 9 is for player 2 on the keyboard to change their outfit. So in here, just do what you've done. Listen for input action. Type in your exact name. You can see I've already done it. Menu change outfit P1. Put that in your action name. You can leave the rest pressed, consume off, callback. If you don't remember how to do this, just drag off your callback node, just like that, and then you can type add and add custom event. Once you do this, you'll get this little red node, and then you can just rename it to be whatever you want. I called it P1 change outfit and P2 change outfit. Okay? And then we need to make a function to call. That function that we need to call is what's going to perform the actual logic to change the materials on the character, or at least to determine what materials we need to change the character to. So go over to your functions here, hit plus function, simple enough. Make a new one, and then it'll open up on its own. Rename it to change outfit or something that you'll know what it is. And then just go ahead and add a player index just for safekeeping. So go over to your inputs, hit new parameter, make it an integer, and then type player index. And this is basically the same way that we've been doing our character select screen all across the board. We have this player index. You can see we set either 0 or 1 to say who's using it so we know what functionality to perform. In this case, it changes if we change the character on the left or the character on the right, because they're different, right? So player 1 goes on the left, player 2 goes on the right. That's how we know what character to change. Then go ahead and call this function from each event and respectively put the player index to the proper value. Player index of 0 is actually player 1, player index of 1 is actually player 2. So set that up accordingly. Then in your change outfit function, all we need to do is put a switch on this integer. So drag off your player index, switch on int right here. And then if it's 0, remember we're player 1. If it's 1, we're player 2. You can also set a default if you'd like. Probably set it to player 1 as the default. And we're going to be doing the exact same logic both ways. You can see it's literally a copy. We're just changing the variables that we're using. Go ahead and get your character widget reference P1. We'll go ahead and do all of player 1 right here, and then we'll copy it down to player 2. I'll show you what variables to change, although you can probably figure it out. Once you get your character widget reference P1, and the name's a little bit confusing. So my character widget reference P1, if you're not familiar, is my base CS actor. He is actually this guy. My base CS actor is my mannequin that gets placed in the scene over the character select. So this is not my side scroller character with my mannequin in his default pose. These are the characters that I place on the character select screen that are playing an animation. You can see this guy's playing his rifle butt, this guy is playing his wristwatch animation, and the mannequin's just walking. Okay? That's these guys that I've placed in the scene as well. Alright. So once you have them, we set them up in a prior episode. Now what we need to do with these guys is get something called the skin array. Now this is going to be specific to each actor, so we are going to have to set these up individually, which is why I have all these open. So first of all, go into each of these. For the 3 characters that you have that I was just covering, you should set up an array of materials. So you can go ahead and add a variable here and call it skin array. I'll just call this skin since I already have skin array. And then change the variable type to material, just the plain material and object reference. And then come over here, click on the actual icon and make it an array. There you go. And I've made my skin array. Now, once you compile this, you'll be able to click on the skin array and add values for however many skins you want, and I can give them a different skin. For example, I can give them this bark bamboo skin. It doesn't always do something. If for whatever reason it doesn't do anything, then you probably don't want to use that material. If you have materials that are meant for your character, it will definitely work. There's just some that don't work depending on the character you have because it won't make sense. Okay, so I can go ahead and add my materials. I put bark bamboo, but that one's actually like invisible, so there's no real reason to do that. If you want to test your materials first, you can just click on your skeletal mesh, go down to your materials, and select the slot you want, and then change it. It'll probably compile shaders like this, so he'll look a little checkerboardy, but then he should fix himself, and now he's like this black chrome, which is a really cool color for him. And then you can always switch it back, but you're like, okay, that's a good one. Then you can go ahead and go get that one. Unreal Tech, there you go. And that becomes one of his skins. Now, it should be noted, your first slot, or whatever slot that you want, but your first slot should probably always be your default skin. So for example, setting this up, I'm going to delete this temp skin array I have, and I'll show you how I've done it. So for the mannequin, I have the UE4 man body, but then I also have the diamond plate material. It's a little bit different for the mutant and the vanguard because they are children of the base CS actor. So you won't be able to actually just set the materials on the skeletal mesh since they're determined by their parent. Because they're determined by their parent, you can still set them, but you just have to do it a different way. If you go to class defaults, in default, you'll have skin array here. You'll have any of the variables you made set up. Like you can see, I did not make the skeletal mesh or default scene root. They come with the character. The only variable I've made is the skin array, and the mutant CS actor and the vanguard CS actor will have access to that. So for my mutant, I've gone ahead and set up the mutant material and the M_cable material. Lastly, in the Vanguard, I've done the same thing. I have my skin array, but specific to the Vanguard, I have something called a Visor skin array. It is set up the exact same way. It is just an array of materials. Literally set up the same way as the skin array I've set up, where you can see I used the Vanguard body material and my training room thumbnail as a material, actually. And then in the Visor skin array, you can just click it if you want and see it. This will change a different material slot because on the Vanguard, he's got 2 material slots. He's got element 0, element 1. So one's the visor and another is the body. So the skin array has to change the proper value for him, but then the visor can change this color. And you can see, if I could get a good view of his face, when we change it on a skeletal mesh, you can see that it changes right here. I'm going to switch it back. That's his default. But there you go. Now you can see I've set up all my materials. That's just how you set them for us to use them. We still have to set them in the logic. So let's hop back over to that. What we're going to do here is actually determine if we need to go to the next material or the next color scheme for the character, or if we need to reset and go back to 0. We're basically just making sure we don't go out of bounds and start trying to access some skin we don't actually have. So go ahead and grab your character widget reference like we talked about, drag off of it, and now get your skin array. Get skin array right here. Drag off of that and get length right here. And then drag off of that one more time and hit minus integer to get length -1. The reason we're doing this is we're going to compare this to our current skin index P1, which starts at 0. Length does not start at 0. It is the number of elements in the array. So for example, skin array, we have 2 elements for everybody. You can put as many as you want, but I just went into 2. You could put 10, 100, 1000. You know, it'll probably start to lag if you put that many in, but you get my point. So we've got 2. So length will literally read 2. So 2 minus 1 has to be greater than our current skin index. Otherwise, we're going to be out of bounds if we increase our current skin index, and we won't have a skin to put on our character. So we want to make sure that if we press the button, we're flip-flopping. So grab your current skin index P1. These are 2 variables that I just made in here. These are not the skin index variables from the base game instance. But instead, they're just new integers that I made within this widget. So just literally make 2 new variables, ++, make them integers, and call them current skin index P1 and P2. You could use your base game instance here if you want. To be honest, I thought it was easier to use this temp variable while we were playing around with the widget, and then at the end we'll go ahead and set the skin to spawn the character with when we confirm. So just make sure length -1 is greater than our current skin index P1. If it is, we're going to increment our current skin index. You can see this is the line. If I could hover over it, it's getting incremented here. Otherwise, if it's not, if length is not greater than this, we need to reset our current skin index back to 0. So what this means, we have 2 skins, right? We select our character. This is skin 1, this is skin 2. If I hit the same button, I would go to skin 3. But if the character doesn't have a skin 3, we need to go back to skin 1. That's what this logic is doing. That's all this is doing. And then we're going to call a function that we make within our base CS actor. So let's go back to this guy. Again, if you make this in your parent, then you don't have to worry about this in the other ones. You have to use it again, but you only have to make it in your parent, and then you can grab it in the others. So all you have to do is add a custom event. Oops, custom event right here. And then I went ahead and added a variable called skin index. So hit plus, make it an integer, call it skin index or index, whatever. Pass in the current skin index P1 as the skin index, and call this event, just literally type in whatever you called it, off of the character reference. And what this will do is it'll have the index that we need to get from the skin array that we made just earlier that has the different materials on it. And then we'll just set the material. So drag your skin array into the scene. Type get, it'll be get a copy. Drag your skin index in. And then grab your skeletal mesh. It's a component. You can also drag it from up here. And then hit set material. You want the one that's just set material. There's a few of them. And then you want to drag in your material that you got from your array into the material slot. You can see I'm doing that right here. Once you do that, your character will be able to switch his or her materials. Worth noting, you're going to want to do this for player 2 as well. So if the switch on the end of the player index is player 1, or player index 1, excuse me, which is player 2, then you want to copy over this exact logic, literally copy and paste it, but make sure you switch character widget reference P1 to P2 here, and current skin index P1 to current skin index P2 here. Same with when you set it here, and this one that you're calling the function on here. Make sure you set these 4 to be P2 instead of P1 on the bottom half. The rest of the logic is exactly the same. A quick way to change variables that are similar in Blueprint, you can right-click on it. So if I have my character widget reference P1, you can right-click on it and hit replace variable with, and replace it with the other option. Okay. So that's all the logic we need as far as changing the outfit goes. All we have to do now is make sure we spawn the actor with it when they spawn in the scene, and also make sure that the other actors, the character select actors, can actually use it as well. Once we're done here with change outfit, we can go back to the event graph. And if you go to on pressed confirm button, so when we go to the next screen is when I lock in our results, so what the characters have picked. So here's where we're confirming what character class they picked for player 1 and player 2. We're going to do the same thing, but confirm the skin index. All we have to do, make sure your line for your base game instance is here. You can see this is all the base game instance. That way I can set my skin index for P1 and P2 that we made earlier in the code. So just drag off of it and type set P1 skin index and set P2 skin index, and then drag in your current skin index P1 and current skin index P2, set them both, and then go on with your level selection stuff. Now the Mutant CS Actor and the Vanguard CS Actor are children of this, but since we made them prior, you're going to need to copy the logic. However, since, again, they are children of it, you can still use the set skin materials. You don't have to make a new one. Just type set skin materials, and you'll actually have an event here. You can do the call function, but that's not what we want. That's calling it like you want to perform that logic. So what you actually want to do is just grab the event. That's what happens when you have an event in a parent class that you want to use in a child class. Just do this. Make sure it still has your integer. You can see it's got an integer as a parameter, which it will. Use that as your index for your skin array, and you're golden. Then do the same thing for your Vanguard, or however many characters you have. However, the difference with him, if you've got a character that has multiple material slots that you want to change when you switch your colors, remember we set up this separate array? Well, funnily enough, we're going to use it the exact same way. Make sure you set up your multiple arrays, if you have multiple, to follow the same behavior, right? So if index 0 of skin array is his first skin, then index 0 of his visor skin array should also be for his first skin. See that? So they line up. If you have it working like that, then you'll notice this is the exact same logic as I did in the other two characters. But what I'm going to do is bring the skin index down below it, and then use the visor skin array instead of the regular skin array to then set that material. The only difference between these two, besides the array I'm using, is the element index I'm setting. You can click on your character and look at their materials to know which slot is which. So element 0 is his visor material, element 1 is his body material. So in the element index, when we're setting his body, we want to use element index 1. When we're setting his visor, we want to use element index 0. Okay, so those are done. The last thing we need to do is set up a little function that we can call in a blueprint library for these guys right here. All three of our actual character BPs, so that we can do the exact same logic that we just did, believe it or not. The exact same logic, except we're going to use mesh instead of skeletal mesh. So let me show you how to do that. Way back in the series, way back when we were setting HUD references still, we actually made this blueprint function library. If you don't remember, I would not fault you for that. It was a long time ago. So actually, we made a blueprint interface, excuse me. If you want to make one, you just add new blueprints and make a blueprint interface. In here, you don't actually set up any logic. What you do is just make functions that can be called. So you probably already have this done if you've been following the series with a function called setHudReference. So for example, in my mutant character BP, we have this event setHudReferences. This is where we set the reference to the HUD. Okay, simple enough. Remember, we did this so that we can call it in all character classes that have this blueprint, regardless of who the parent is, if it's a specific class, or if it's the base class. We don't want to worry about any of that. That's why we use this blueprint interface. And the reason we're doing that is because these character BPs aren't parented to another. Like, mutant character BP is not a child of side-scroller character. If you look at the child, it's a child of the code class mutant character. So we can't just go ahead and grab whatever we do in the side-scroller character and put it in the mutant character BP, because it's not a child of this class. But we can use this basic function interface, is what I called it, this blueprint interface though, and make functions that we can call wherever we want. We're going to trigger them when we want. So we want to trigger it in the game mode after the characters just spawn to make sure their materials get set correctly. So there we go. So make a new function, just hit plus. I called it change character skin. I went down to inputs, added a new parameter, added an integer, and called it outfit index. It should probably be called skin index, since I made it very clear that we're doing skins and not outfits. But, you know, that's my brain working like it does. I'm going to keep it like that for now. But, okay, so we have our outfit index integer. Now, go into each of your characters that you want to be able to change skins with. Make sure that you go into class settings. You just hit class settings, hit add, and then you find the interface you want. I've already added the basic function interface, so you can't see it in my list. But if you don't have anything here, you'll be able to see it. Do that for all three, or however many characters you have, but just do that for everybody. And then what we do is we can actually just call that event now. We can just call it. So you just type event change character skin right here. And you can see I made it here. The fun part about this is the exact same logic that we made in the character select actors. See? We have the skin index. We grab our skin array, we type get, and we set our material. Well, would you look at that? We also have a skin array in each of our characters. It's got the same materials as our character select characters have. We grab it. We use the outfit index from the function to get the material we want to use. And then we grab the mesh of our character and set material. And then drag this material into it. Okay, I do the same for side scroller character and the same for Vanguard character, but the Vanguard character has to have his own logic. Remember, he's got a skin array for element index 1, but he also has his visor skin array for index 0. And you can see I have them both here. Okay, so now we've successfully done that. The very last thing we need to do is go into our game mode. I'm going to clean some of these out. Just leave a few open for you. Let's go into our game mode BP. And at the very end of our event graph, which for some reason was not open, we go all the way over. We were actually doing something called set HUD references last. We're going to add a little bit on the end here, just these two nodes. So we're going to make sure we change our character's skin Once we made sure they spawned, and once we made sure we can set our HUD references, they're a valid reference, so now we can change their skin to match the materials that we want. I'm going to straighten these connections for you guys. Okay, all we need to do, we're in our default game mode BP, so we already have a game instance reference, so just bring that onto the screen, get it, and grab your individual skins. P1 skin index, and P2 skin index, right here, okay? Then we need to grab our player 1 and player 2 references. They exist within our game mode, so you don't need to get your game instance. Just look for player 1, get it, right click, player 2, get it, and then you can drag off these individual players called change character skin message, which this is calling the basic function interface, or interface function, which is calling this one in the character blueprint, which is what we want. So after we know they're valid, we can spawn and then drag your skin index in. Alright guys, so there you go. Once you do that, you'll be able to select your characters, change your skins, change them back, and then whatever skins you have selected last, you'll be able to enter the world with those skins. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this episode. Hopefully it helped you kind of get familiar with skins and outfits in this game, and how they can be done in any game that you want to implement them on. If you enjoyed, please subscribe. It helps me more than anything else you can do for the channel, and more importantly, it lets me know that I'm doing a good job in continuing to teach you guys what you want to learn, which is the point of this channel. If you would like to come support the channel, you can support us on either YouTube memberships just by hitting the join button below, or you can join us on Patreon. Either way, supporting the channel is just something I really appreciate. Obviously, it's not obligatory, it's not required. It'll help me continue to make nice tutorials for you guys, so thank you guys for the support. If you had any issues with this tutorial or any of my tutorials, feel free to join the Discord. It's in the description below. Lastly, guys, if you want to come support us on Twitch, twitch.tv/Shawnthebro27, you can find us playing Demon's Souls and Resident Evil. Alright, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.